Okay, I'll call to order the October 2023 meeting of the Homewood Planning Commission. Sorry for the static and feedback there. If we could start out with a roll call, please.
All right. Mr. Henniger. Here. Ms. Wilcott.
Here.
Mr. Harwell.
Here.
Mr. Respento.
Here.
Mr. Armstead.
Here.
Mr. Broadhead.
Here.
Ms. Andrus.
Here.
Mr. Gulas.
Here.
And Mr. Roberts.
Here. Thank you. Next, Fred circulated the minutes, very long minutes from the September meeting. I had a chance to review them. I thought they looked good. If they look good, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I just had two spelling names. That was it. It's Slade with a D, Slade, Blackwell, and then Ellen Witt, Witt. That was it.
Yeah, we can.
But with that change, those changes, I would move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, well, the minutes are approved. Okay, communications. Mr. Armstead, do you have any communications as vice chair?
No, sir.
Okay. The only thing as chair, wanted to point out a couple things. One, and I try to say this at every meeting, if at any point you come up and speak either as an applicant or a member of the public, please write your name in the log or the I don't know if it's a notebook up at the podium, and also say your name and address. I think write your name and address and say your name and address, so we have that for the record. Also, if you're presenting, please try to speak in the microphone so we can try to create a good record of what happens. The second thing is our first two cases are carried over from last month, the Piggly Wiggly development plan and rezoning request. At the time we kind of hit the pause button last month, we had completed the public portion of that hearing and reopened it for questions from the board. We're going to resume that at that point today, so we'll not have a public portion of the hearing. That said, I just want to remind everyone, we are just making a recommendation to the City Council with regard to that development. You'll have an opportunity when the City Council meets to discuss, if it's presented to the City Council, you'll have a chance to present any concerns or support you have at that time. All right, with that said, we'll go to old business, which is, first case is one of the two Piggly Wiggly cases, both relating to 3030 Independence Drive. The case numbers are FD 230701 and RZ 230702. The applicant and owner is McConnell Terry, or White and Terry Realty. Whoever's presenting, if you could come forward at this time. As I mentioned a moment ago, we've already had the presentation, so we're just going to direct more questions to you at this time.
Thank you. I'm Murray Legg, and I represent McConnell, White, and Terry. When we were here last month, at the end of the whole presentation, you asked if we could continue it and answer some questions that seemed to be hanging out there. And one of them was Andy was not able to be here, and he's not here tonight again because his daughter is getting married, and I think got married today. And that was one of the questions. The other question was on the sewer easement on the north side of the building, the proposed building, if we could put a loading dock there. And so we went and met with Heather Carter from the county, and we had that meeting, and we've talked with Andy, and I believe you're in receipt of a letter from Andy and one from Heather Carter that kind of states the position. And so with that said, we have met again, we've talked, we've talked to a few of the people that are here representing the group, who's opposed, and we understand that. But this development and where that is works on the north side. I did it again, excuse me. On the north side, you've got Cameron's Corners, and you've got Hunter's Cleaners that is right in the middle of Cameron's Corners. And I have talked with them and come to find out, in a week's time, they have between 500 and 600 cars a week that come down through that drive-through, which would be right there where the loading dock would be on the north side. Plus, just a reminder, our entrance to our store is on that northeast corner. So with that said, we feel like on the south side is the best and safest place to put the loading dock. And so really, that's all that I'm having to say. I don't want to have to go through it all again unless you just ask me to. But like I said, we feel like that's the best for Andy and his team, the best from Cameron's Corners, the best for safety, either traffic or pedestrians. And so that's the plan that we're presenting. And we would just like to ask for a good vote. And we appreciate your time.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions.
I'm sorry?
I have a few questions
Sure.
for Mr. Leggett, that's okay.
Sure.
I wanted to clarify about directing traffic. We had 2 conversations last month, and I'm trying to remember. There were 2 separate, in my mind, there were 2 separate conversations. One was having somebody direct traffic during deliveries, and the other was having someone direct traffic during school drop-off and pickup.
Correct.
Is that something you're committed to do every single day?
Yes, Andy said he is committed to do that. He
Okay.
sure is.
Okay. I have 2 more questions, and I know you're aware, I know you guys met with with some of the business owners this week, and I have spoken with them as well. They had asked me a few weeks ago to check into the storage unit that's sitting on the city right-of-way. At the time, we didn't know it was city right-of-way. So I, not knowing it was right-of-way, but knowing you can't have something just sitting in the middle of a sidewalk, I had our compliance officer start looking into that. And then I spoke with Mr. Smith this week, and about also the parking spaces that are marked CVS parking only, and both that sidewalk and those parking spaces are city right-of-way, so CVS has no claim to those parking spaces. And so, is that today? Because yesterday they were not there. Okay, excellent, okay. That
Those are
storage
the
unit's
parking
still there.
spaces.
Signage is gone, great.
They're gone. They're gone.
Fabulous. Okay,
And,
what about the storage unit?
And we have talked with the store manager, and that storage unit has all their paper files in it. And they're waiting on the group, and I can't remember the
Iron
name of the
Mountain.
group. Billy,
It's Iron
what-
Mountain.
Iron Mountain. And so they're waiting on them to come and get it, because they've already,
Okay, what's the
called
ETA
and
on that?
requested them.
Yeah, thank you. What is the ETA on that, do you know?
I asked the store manager, and she said it could be a week, it could be 3 weeks. You know, that they just don't just drop everything and come.
Okay, but it is underway?
It's in the works, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Is that storage unit, is that on the same side and the same part of the building where those parking spaces?
It is,
were?
I can.
Okay, yeah. I think you can see it in some of the overhead.
Yep, it is, yeah. Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't bring more
Yeah.
copies.
And the storage unit's adjacent to where, when you were describing last month, how the truck would, the trucks would turn around the corner and then back, that's right, kind of adjacent to where the truck's gonna be backing into, pulling up and backing into the proposed storage area, loading area, right?
And yes, it is, and I will show you this as well. This is, there's the storage unit right there. That's the storage unit.
That's good.
And I think that's in our packet as well. You can kind of see all those are red line going through where the property line is. I had a question about, and we got some more public feedback from one of the owners of the apartments that would be, I guess, southwest
Yes.
of the CVS and almost kind of due south of where the building's going to go, about concerns about noise in the morning. Their tenants would be subjected to more noise than they are now. What sort of, first of all, just kind of describe for us what you think will be, in terms of noise, what will be created in the morning. I don't know if it's truck backing up with a beeping or,
beep,
and what, if any, efforts or compromises or plans could you have to try to mitigate any noise as much as possible?
You want to do it? This is Vic Fortenberry. He's the architect for.
Victor
Piggy Wig.
Fortenberry, Fortenberry Associates Architects. The openings to the loading dock and the openings to the compactor are both facing east. away from the apartments. And there would be really little way for the sound that would be ongoing at the openings of the back of the truck in the loading dock, or the action of the compactor is enclosed in a masonry enclosure. And there's nothing to let sound back, to the back side of the building. If anything, it would be reverberated, back out the openings to the east. And the noise, I think, probably of the truck itself backing down into the dock would be really the only noise. After that, you would just have the doors going up and the pallets being loaded into the building. But all of that is, guarded against sound by the building itself. You're inside the building and there are no windows on the back, so no openings on the back. So I believe that's not an issue at all for both the trash and the loading.
Do we know the height of that, that barrier from the loading dock? So when that truck is moving back, the barrier between that and, I think, Courtney Drive?
Well, the loading dock itself, the threshold will be 4 feet above the grade, and the door itself is 8 feet high. So it will be 12 feet above the grade to the top of the opening for the loading dock. But also, the dock is ramped downward in order to get, because the grade is higher away from the dock, and we've got to get the truck back down to that level. So you've probably got a 4-foot differential right there at least where it slopes down. So you're looking, if you were standing at the edge of the drive looking at the loading dock, you might see 3 or 4 feet of the top of that opening. And that would be all.
Discuss the wall and how tall the wall
Well, yes, it was mentioned about the wall itself on the south side. It was indicated by some of the participants that they didn't want to see the trash or didn't want to see the mess that's usually made sometimes when you have a compactor or you have a dumpster. Well, we've got a compactor, but like I say, it's inside a building. We don't have a dumpster per se. But in order to help secure the visual, so you have a truck backing down, if you just don't want to see all of that in the door itself, we have provided at the owner's additional cost a masonry wall to match the brick of the building, and that extends out from the end of the compactor on out about 25, 30 feet, I believe, to the east.
Mr.
Makes
Lewis,
it
is
more
that the one you
attractive
were asking
anyway.
about the height?
Yeah, I thought that's what.
Yeah, I mean, that one, and then on the back side of the building. So just trying to figure out, is it
How
like
tall
12
is it?
feet tall?
That's the wall he was asking about, the height of the wall on the south side on the
Yep,
furthest back.
right.
It's
12 feet by
12
about
feet.
25 feet long. Plus the fact we've got some trees planted on the south side of that to soften that wall a little bit as well. So we've added landscaping on the side and added landscaping on the back, which would face the west and the apartments to the west. We'll be looking at some landscaping and masonry as opposed to anything else. So I think that would be a good way to help the vision, soften the site visually, and also help noise pollution.
I just have one request again for clarification. I think Mr. Henniger brought this up at last month's meeting, and that deals with those 10 spaces wherein it says that they will be blocked during certain times for delivery. Just from a practical standpoint, and I understand you said you're going to have an employee out there when trucks are coming, but I can foresee somebody pulling in early, parking there and going inside the store, and then here comes a truck, and how are you going to get that person to move their car from
Well,
a practical standpoint?
As it's turned out now that we found out the actual radii or radius that's required to turn the truck, to get it into position to go to the loading dock, it can just make the one turn and go in reverse and back directly to the dock. And it doesn't have to wait in front of the vehicle, spaces there for the car parking. So the car parking's not affected by that. The only
Okay.
time it would be effective would be the time the truck's literally pulling down. And as you may recall, Andy and I looked at that with a trial with the biggest truck they've got with Winn-Dixie. And it was something like 13 or 14 seconds from the old store, the back of the old store, all the way down at a reasonable speed, turning the corner. After that, you'd back into the dock. So we were concerned for a while that those spaces on the east end or the southeast end of the building might be marginal, that we might have to be concerned about the truck hitting those spaces or riding over those spaces. So we were gonna set this up for employees only, so that the grocer could control who's in those spaces as opposed to the general public. But as it turns out, that's really not necessary. What he is gonna do, however, is, primarily to act as a flag man. If the truck is gonna come in and have to back up, that's when you're gonna need him. That's gonna be the flagman that will stop anybody from driving or walking behind that truck as he's backing up. So that's a safety concern, and he's obligated himself at his expense to, not an employee back in the butcher shop, but a person who's employed for that purpose, a security person.
What are the hours gonna be for deliveries?
I don't know. He would have to answer that, but it would be at the hours that they deliver.
Wasn't that something he specifically was talked
He
about
did.
last time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Andrew Paciglio mentioned that some deliveries came as early as 5 o'clock, and then, but they could control when certain deliveries were made, and he even said that if they didn't make the delivery on time, they would have to turn them around and rearrange for another delivery
Much
at
like
an
they do-
appropriate time, so.
Much like a crest line, there's specific hours they have to be.
Yeah.
And I believe that was,
But I think certain large trucks come early, and then smaller trucks may come at different times
I
during
mean,
the
I
day.
know
but-
speaking for myself, that was a major decision point, is to know
Right.
exactly when those
For sure.
are allowed, when they're not allowed, so.
Well, I know, I talked to Andy this morning, and he told me that he wants this store so badly, and he really respects Homewood and the people in Homewood, and loves operating there, that he will do whatever is asked of him to make the store viable in terms of safety for folks. And I hate to correct you, but the trial that we did when we turned kind of out of the well, not the alley, back in, but turned there and then backed into where it is now was between 30 and 40 seconds, not between 13 and 14.
It was 13 to the point of
To the point,
of
yeah.
the backup.
Yeah.
Right.
And Fred, I apologize, I don't have the copy of the minutes here. Was there something in the minutes specifically about what hours he had mentioned? Did he-
I think I mentioned, turning back. I've got
That
copies, but-
the deliveries would be by a
Yeah,
certain,
I'm
be
not
done
sure I
by a
actually
certain
said
hour?
5 o'clock, but delivery times were controlled. They could coordinate those delivery times.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
there was a specific time. that
He
it would be
gave
done
a
by.
specific time. I think it might have been 7 or 7:30, so that the trucks will be
Yeah,
finished by
like
the
a
time
time
any
frame
kids
between
leave.
here and here.
Student traffic.
Certain trucks
pedestrian
would
traffic.
come,
But was
and-
that in the minutes that we
but
could
beginning
refer back to?
as
or not?
early as
Well-
5, but I'm not
that
sure
was
I
the goal.
said 5 o'clock in the minutes, but it's in the tape, and that's archived, so there's a record of what was said, yeah.
Do we have that?
Or if there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion. And I think the motion would incorporate what we've been told the store is willing to do with respect to public safety, having an employee assisting with loading, loading and unloading of trucks and the truck traffic coming through. And I think, I believe you said something about having an employee out during school hours? Okay, subject to those two proffers. I said this a long time ago, but with that, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it, subject to all the deliveries being done by 7:30.
Is that in addition to the proffer or some way tied to the proffer, the
Well, I mean, the
delivery times?
They offered the 7:30 out.
Okay, I found, just for the record,
Right.
I found, all right, Additional input into the discussion was provided by Andrew Visiglio with the Visiglio family owners of Piggly Wiggly, who pointed out that the store could help to address the issue by scheduling delivery trucks to come less frequently and at set times of the day or on weekends. That would help to minimize disruptions to normal traffic.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Was there a specific time mentioned there? 'Cause my
That's all it
recollection was it
says.
was 7:30, something like that. Is that,
As I recall, the tape would verify, but he said that some trucks came as early as 5, but then he mentioned a time frame. It possibly could have been 7:30, between 5 and, for certain trucks, and then smaller trucks might come in the afternoon, again, when, according to certain times, that's where they could accommodate it, but.
Okay, we have a
So I had a motion from
Motion from Mr. Harwell.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Ms. Wilcott? No. Mr. Harwell?
yes?
Mr. Respento?
Yes.
Mr. Armstead?
Yes.
Mr. Henniger?
Yes.
Ms. Andrus?
No.
Mr. Gulas?
Yes.
Mr. Broadhead?
Yes.
And Mr. Roberts?
yes. So your case will go forward, at least on the plan, the development plan, the final development plan, go forward with a 7-2 vote in favor from the commission.
That's a favor. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then we have the second case, the rezoning case that was part and parcel with the first case. I would also entertain a motion on RZ 230702.
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all deliveries being done by 7:30.
Second.
Who seconded it? Yes. All right. Ms. Wilcott? No. Mr. Harwell?
Yes?
Mr. Respento?
Yes.
Mr. Armstead?
Yes.
Mr. Henninger?
Yes.
Ms. Andrus?
Yes.
Mr. Gulas?
Yes.
Mr. Broadhead?
Yes.
And Mr. Roberts?
Yes, so your rezoning recommendation, again, will go to city council with a 7-2, 6-2, 6-1, rather, 7-1.
8-1.
8-1.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be close. 8-1 positive recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll move on to new business. Give me 1 second to find where we are. The first case is RZ 231001. It's a rezoning case involving 1300 Columbiana Road. Applicant is Eric Rogers with Progressive Properties. Mr. Rogers, if you come forward and state your case, please.
My name is Bob Easley. I'm with Alabama Engineering Company here. Eric is here, and but I was going to present the case to you. We are requesting rezoning of the Second Presbyterian Church site. It's a 3.7 acre site on Columbiana Road. It's currently has a church building on it. The Second Presbyterian Church has merged with another Presbyterian church, and the Second Presbyterian Church is no longer meeting at that facility. They have elected to sell the property, and Mr. Rogers has it under contract, and we're here tonight to ask for rezoning to C1 for a proposed medical office, C1 office building zoning, and we prepared a conceptual site plan for y'all to review and submitted that to the city. So that's where we are in the process. We have come up with a plan that I think meets zoning, meets the required parking count, stays out of the floodway, has access onto Columbiana Road and Old Green Springs Road. And we are here requesting a positive recommendation from this body to the city council for rezoning.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. If anyone is here to speak on this case, this would be your opportunity to come forward. Again, I would remind you, if you do, please write out your name on the pad and give your address, write down your address as well.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Seeley. I'm the owner of ABC Child Development Center, which is located at 1300 Columbiana Road. We have been there since May of 1996, and I'm here not only to advocate for my business, but to advocate for the 90 families that will be affected by the rezoning. As many of you may know, that child care in America is in a crisis right now. There are not enough centers to provide care for the families, and over 64% of women work outside their home. Can you hear? I'm a little short. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
There is a wait list to get in the daycare presently. My infant department, the next availability is August of 2024. And it's that way, and not just my center, but centers throughout the center, throughout the area. By rezoning this property, we will be putting 90 families at risk of losing, well, they will be losing their child care with me, and it'll put them at a crisis and finding daycare because there's just not any availability out there. So I'm here to ask you to please consider the 90 families that will be affected if we rezone, if you rezone the Second Presbyterian Church property, and to give us consideration that because the ABC Child Development Center wants to serve the city of Homewood for another 27 years. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Rice. I am a Homewood resident at 1021 Drexel Parkway, and I live just down the street from 1300 Columbiana Road. I drive past this church every single day on my way to work. Despite my efforts to teach for the city of Homewood, I teach at Pizzett's Middle School, and so I drive down that street every day. It is a blessing to be able to drive past that historic sanctuary. It is also a blessing to worship in that sanctuary most Sundays. I am a part of the congregation that leases that property on Sundays, and we just want to express that we would be interested in purchasing this property. An offer has already been made. That offer was not accepted. But we do want to continue worshiping there. We want to preserve the daycare and allow them to continue to work there at and provide affordable care for their families. I know myself, I have a son who is 19 months old. He does not attend ABC, but we did tour it, and it was our only other option if we were not pulled off of a waiting list at another daycare. It is a struggle for working parents to find a place for their kids to be cared for, and especially a place that is affordable. I just wanted to express those things to you this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ashley George, and my husband Thomas and I have been Homewood residents for the past 9 years, and we still are with our 2 kids. We love this city for its connectedness, general sense of kindness, and neighborly support, for its diversity, for its committed citizens, businesses, and schools. And we also love its historical presence. My purpose in speaking to you tonight is to implore the Planning Commission to preserve the community value of Second Presbyterian Church and its property by protecting it as a church and not supporting its rezoning to commercial property. There are several reasons I make this appeal, and a few of the main ones are the following. First, I believe that Second Presbyterian and its property should remain dedicated to worship in this community. Churches are central to the identity of a community, and keeping this building and its property as a site of worship will serve its citizens in ways that a commercial entity simply cannot. Second, I have come to appreciate the value that the ABC daycare holds to this community as well. The daycare that meets at Second Presbyterian is one of the very few full-time daycares in the city of Homewood, and to my knowledge, it is the only one that serves a particular socioeconomic demographic in terms of its tuition costs. The families who use this daycare will be displaced, and there is not another daycare, to my knowledge, within reasonable distance or within Homewood city limits that will be as affordable to these families. Lastly, both Grace Fellowship Church and the ABC daycare desire to have the property and continue meeting there, and I'll be happy to disclose that I am a member of Grace Fellowship Church, though I am not speaking on their behalf tonight. That is, there was and is another option for preservation. While it is certainly within the rights of Second Presbyterian and or the Presbytery at large to accept whatever offer they so choose, and we have graciously respected that, their prerogative here, I wanted to be sure that it is clear to the Planning Commission that it is not the case that there were no other options in terms of the sale of the property. Thank you so much for allowing your citizens the opportunity to speak. There is so much we love about the city, and we are grateful for the chance to be heard on this issue. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is James Martin. I'm a transplant to Homewood. I'm originally from a small town in eastern Georgia, but I've been here a little over 2 years. My address is 1916 Shades Cliff Terrace, Apartment C. I'm here to express my sadness at the possibility of losing such a beautiful community space. Moving from a small town where everyone has known each other for generations to a big city like this is a daunting task. In the worship space that is 1300 Columbiana, I found a home. I found a place to belong. It was my church that made me love Homewood and consider this my place. Although I'm not a native, I love Homewood, and I consider this place my city. And I can say that because of the community and the friends that I've built around my worship at Grace Fellowship Church at 1300 Columbiana. My heart breaks at the idea of Homewood losing such a valuable place to belong, to worship, and to thrive. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laurel Ware, and my husband and I, Davis, are West Homewood residents. We live at 305 Hillmore Lane. We love our community. We love our neighborhood. I live about 5 minutes from the church as well. Not only do I live in the neighborhood, but I am also on staff with the church mentioned Grace Fellowship. Because of my role with our staff, I've worked as a liaison for the last 4 years with Second Presbyterian Church as well as ABC Daycare, and I can say that it has been an immense blessing. We've built amazing relationships with not only the daycare but at Second Presbyterian as well, and I come tonight to just speak on behalf of the good things that are happening in our community because of Second Presbyterian Church and our partnership with them as well as the daycare. And so I come behalf tonight to speak about the importance of preserving institutions such as churches as well as the daycare. I've spent much time in that building. I've seen many of the kids in the hallway, and I think it would be a real disservice to our community to have those doors shut, whether or not Grace Fellowship is able to worship there anymore. Just want to speak on behalf of the good things that are happening at that property and would love to continue to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this case?
Good evening. My name's Keith Arundel. My office is 2850 Cahaba Road. I'm not a member of the church, but I am their agent, their real estate agent, and they asked me to help them handle the sale of the property. When I was first talked to, when the church first asked me about this, Eric Rogers had approached them months ago about this property, and they liked Eric. And when we put it on the market, Eric's the first person we called. We got 3 offers. One was from Grace Church, one was from another developer, and then Eric. And after much consideration, we laid out all the pros and cons of each offer. Eric's was substantially higher, for one thing, and they all had contingencies. Some had financing contingencies, some had zoning contingencies. But we felt that Eric, in his experience, he's done some stuff in Homewood before, and I've seen some other projects that he's done, and he's got Bob Easley, who's probably the best engineer in town, on his side. So we figured that he'd have the best chance to get this thing to closing. So we opted to go with Eric. We entered in the contract back in May, and shortly after that, we tried to communicate with the tenants, you know, how much time we had, when the first zoning case was going to be heard, so they could make other plans. You know, that, as you've probably heard by now, the church has really lost most of its members, but they've continued to maintain the property since May, and they don't really have the luxury of time to, you know, terminate this contract and go with another one, subject to all the contingencies that they might have. So the church would really appreciate your support in this matter. They want to use, they're going to merge with another church, and they'd like to use the proceeds for to fund their missions. And I just really appreciate your positive approval of this, or recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening. Chad Stogner, 234 Crest Drive. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but just following up with him. Many of y'all know me and know some surrounding information about my church and where we are. And there are 3 other churches that I know that are in the commercial districts of Homewood looking for spaces, or like this one wanting to stay where they are. So, there's already plenty of commercial space to house other developments that's already appropriately zoned. So, the only reason they're probably offering more is because it's contingent on a change in zoning. So, I would just say that from a city planning matter, it might be pertinent to consider leaving this. It seems like there's a willing buyer. I don't know what the numbers are, but they would have other options if they wanted to do a project and it was feasible. So I would just ask that you consider the other bodies of faith that are looking to bloom and blossom in Homewood. A lot of young congregations that need space, young kids that want to come up. There's not a lot of options. So, I know my church, we had to go into a commercial building, but, this one is obviously suited for a church, and it's a beautiful little church, and it's a beautiful little faith community. So I know the new church is aging out and merging with another one, and I love the idea that would be used for, the money would be used for ministry, but I imagine the new church going into that space would also be used for ministry. So I would just say let's leave the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to speak on this case? Okay, seeing no one else, we'll close the public portion. Mr. Easley, if you could come up and answer the commission's questions.
I think I've heard all the people who spoke on the case. I think the couple of points are the Second Presbyterian Church congregation that owns that building has evaluated options, 3 options, and decided that the proposed option that we're here tonight for is the best option for them as the seller, as the landowner. One thing that I didn't mention earlier is there's medical office, there's C1 across the street just to the north of this site. It fits, this zoning fits with the adjacent properties, the zoning that are there. There's C1 to the north and apartments, which I think are R6 to the south. It's a good use. It fits in right. It's right on a busy commercial road, and it's a good, we think, a good use for this piece of property. I don't have any other answers for the people that are there, except that, you know, that the Second Presbyterian Church has let everybody know, I think a long time ago, that this was coming, and that they couldn't stay and keep that building available for rent. And so they've made the decision to sell, enter into a contract with my client, and this is the path that we're proceeding on. So again, we're asking for your recommendation for rezoning to C1 to the City Council. And if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer those to the best of my ability.
Thank you. I had, but the first thing that occurred to me is, if this was approved and approved by the City Council, obviously, what would be your time frame? What would your timeline for removing, demoing what's there and building your new building?
The Second Presbyterian Church has let them know they'd have about 6 more months to relocate. I don't have a firm date on that, but it's approximately 6 months from now that they would have to vacate and they'd start demolition.
And how long ago, if you can recall, did this first, I mean, was this first offered, or you became aware that this, or I know that you're not the applicant, but do you have that recollection as to how long ago this came up for sale? Well, I guess when it came up for sale, or when it became fairly clear that it was going to be up for sale.
I think we let Eric know back in April.
When was the when was the daycare and the other church notified?
I'm not sure. Mary Clyde, some church members notified them. I didn't, but some of them, because they're there on site. But I don't know this particular time. But I think it was plenty of time. We told them when the zoning was going to be. From what I recall, it was at least 3 or 4 months from this hearing, this first hearing.
Thanks. And
Mr. Arundel, real quick, since you're representing the church, it seems, in some capacity, I guess my question is, when did this take place as far as the so it's still the church's property. Who owns, I guess, is it a district? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But the Presbyterian Church, I know Methodist Church, Baptist Church, I don't know their structure. Is it owned by the people locally, or is it held by a district and they make a district decision? It's a local decision.
The trustees, they've got trustees. I met with the local folks, nobody in any district or anything. We all sat around the table and they voted on it.
There's a local not-for-profit.
That's right.
Okay. That was my question. And there's no one here from Second Presbyterian, right?
Not tonight.
So did I understand correctly? The 3 offers, obviously one would not require rezoning, but the other 2 would. The current one that you're pursuing and the other one both would require as a rezone.
But they all had contingencies.
Yeah.
They all had financial contingencies. 2 of them had zoning contingencies, and they all take time.
Can you tell us, is the intention of the owners to no longer allow the rent whether they do this rezone or not, or is it contingent upon the rezone? So what I'm asking is basically they've decided that they're not going to let anybody rent the building from this point forward.
I don't know when they're going to terminate the leases.
Okay.
I think they'll let them stay as long as they can. They're not looking to kick them out because Eric's not ready to break ground anyway.
I've got a question. So there were 3 offers on the property.
Yes.
Was everyone notified at the same time that the building was for sale, or was this offered to everyone at different times?
Well, Eric was first.
Okay, so it was off market then?
It was off market then, and once we got Eric's offer, I put it out to the commercial folks that I know, and Grace Church was a tenant there, so the church informed them that it was for sale. But we considered all the offers at the same time. I put a summary of the offers in front of them, and we discussed all of them at the same time.
Can I confirm with someone that the daycare will stay if it remains, if Grace is able to stay or Grace is able to take over and purchase the building, that the daycare would stay?
John Wells, 427 Hillwood Drive. Been a Homewood resident for 10 years. I'm an elder at Grace, and yes, I can confirm that.
Do you guys already have tenants set for the medical office building or a potential? A lot of medical office.
Eric Rogers, Progressive Properties. Currently, we're in active talks with medical provider for a large portion of the building. Correct. Yeah, we are. Yes, sir. Be a great addition to the community. And to speak to the point about time, I want to work with both existing tenants and will and have it relate to ABC that I'm in no rush for. I want them to be able to stay and plan as much as reasonably possible. And if you know me, that's something that's a high priority for me to work with. I'm not in any business of kicking anybody out. I want to work with them to make sure the transition is as easy as possible.
The rezoning is conditioned upon you actually closing on the property, right?
Correct.
And so if for some reason you don't close on the property, the zoning would stay as it currently sits, right?
And obviously Keith, representing the church, knows them well, and I have gotten to know them well through this process. And wonderful group of people, good stewards of their assets. They have merged with Edgewood Presbyterian already. They have had their last meeting. Some of the things have actually come down off the building, and they have a goal now to sell their property, use the funds, the proceeds from the funds of their property to deploy into ministry, to take their new church and the funds from their asset and really do good work. That is their goal, and it would make me happy to help them achieve that goal.
As y'all know, I have a difficulty with our zoning ordinance as it relates to churches only being allowed in institutional zoning. So I think it's difficult at best, right? So when you move it from a institutional zoning to commercial, to me, I have some heartburn, right? I'm sensitive to these things, right? Sensitive to the church. But at the same time, if the church entered into a valid contract with you, right? As much as I may not like the fact of what was occurring, right? I don't see any reason why it shouldn't occur, right? And that's the difficulty with the church, to make their decisions at their point, and your decisions to move forward, right, with building the building. I don't see why C1 couldn't work here, right? Regardless of how much it might be sensitive to the churches or the daycare's needs, or the fact that it's too difficult in Homewood to have a church, to have a zoning to have that building. But if they sold the building to you, right, there's no reason we should prevent it just because we're sensitive to other concerns and don't like it. At least that's my opinion.
And as a longtime member of a church in Homewood, I respect everyone's thoughts and opinions about this project. And the end product will be something that is in very good keeping with the neighborhood, the building directly to the north, which is a very nice medical office building. And it is a very good use for the property going forward under a redevelopment scenario. It's a very good use. And we've had a lot of interest, potentially half the building already.
When you zeroed in on this property, was it with the idea of having it, turning it into a medical office or using it as a medical office, or is that kind of, that use evolved over time?
I used to own the Greenway office building, which is just to the north across the street, and we got to witness firsthand, being the owner, the demand for the medical use there in that specific area, and being convenient for off I-65 and just, I mean, the obvious 65, Lakeshore, 280, 65 North, and that building has remained, I don't own it anymore, the Greenway building, but it has remained leased to good quality providers, and that's exactly what we would do with this project. There's a high demand for medical use.
Well, if there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning from I-2 to C1.
Second.
All right. Mr. Broadhead,
Yes.
Mr. Goulas,
Yes.
Ms. Andress,
No.
Ms. Henniger, Mr. Henniger,
Yes.
Mr. Armstead,
No.
Mr. Respento,
No.
Mr. Harwell,
Yes.
Ms. Wilcott. No. And Mr. Roberts.
No. So it'll go forward to city council with a 5-4 negative vote. And just for the benefit of everyone here, the city council takes a recommendation from us, and then they ignore it or pay attention to it. But that's all we're voting on today is a recommendation. Okay. Thank you.
But following up what the chairman said, the city council will hold a public hearing on this case within roughly 3 to 4 weeks, but all property owners within 500 feet will be notified of that public hearing, so that would be another opportunity to come down to register your opinions with regard to the case, just to let you know.
Okay, our next case is AD 23-1002. The address is 2700 Second Avenue South. I'm sorry, I think I've got the wrong address. Hold on. I'm sorry, it's 202 State Farm Parkway. And it relates to a request for an amended development plan. I'm sorry. Yeah, amended development plan for fast-paced urgent care. If the applicant would come forward and state your case, please.
Do I need to sign in if I'm the applicant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
My name is Brian Presnell. I'm a civil engineer working with proposed developer of this project. We are here requesting an amendment to the development plan. I think it's just for the use for a proposed urgent care facility to be located at the northwest corner of State Farm Parkway and Wildwood Parkway. This is just directly east of the Milo's that's there in front of the shopping center. That's what I think it's just the use, the current Wildwood development plan we're told does not allow for medical use, I think, or offices. So that's what we're requesting.
Okay, thank you. This is a public case. If anyone is here from the public to speak on it, please come forward now. Okay, and seeing no one, we will close the public portion, and Mr. Presnell, if you could just answer questions from the commission. And Ms. Presnell said something at the very end about the use. I mean, this is not a rezoning, this is just a development plan. I assume in terms of the use, everything is okay. Okay. And I'm assuming with the amount of parking in front of the old Navy that we're okay on parking.
Old Navy.
I think it's been 3 things since I've lived here. And nothing is developed there currently, correct? It's just a parking.
It's asphalt parking lot,
Yeah.
yes.
You ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve AD 231002.
Second.
I'm sorry, second by whom? Ah, good. All right. Ms. Wilcott?
Yes.
Mr. Harwell?
Yes.
Mr. Respento?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Armstead?
Yes.
Mr. Henninger?
Yes.
Ms. Andrus?
Yes.
Mr. Gulas?
Yes.
And Mr. Broadhead?
Yes.
And lastly, Mr. Roberts.
Yes. So go forward with a 9-0 affirmative vote from our commission. Yeah, our final case tonight is FD 231003, an application for approval of a final development plan, 501 Scott Street. The applicant is Eric Hendon. If whoever's presenting on this case would come forward, please. Oh, you're there. You just introduce yourself to us, give us your address, and then write it in that notepad, please.
Yeah. Eric Hendon, 2126 Morse Avenue, Birmingham. As stated, here to request approval of a final development plan for Homewood Animal Hospital. It's going to be a renovation and an addition, along with site and landscape improvements to their existing location. Been there for a long time on Scott Street.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just surrendering.
All right, Mr. Hendon, if you have nothing else, at least from your introductory remarks, I'll open this up to the public. If anyone would like to speak on this case, come forward now and speak your mind. Seeing no one, we will close the public portion, and if you could answer any questions the commission has for you. And this is really more a question for Fred and Cale. This has to be approved because it's in West Homewood, because of the zoning in West Homewood, correct?
That's right.
Anywhere else in the city, he wouldn't be in front of us.
That's right.
Exciting.
I wanted to ask a question if I could. Can't find my drawing. On your site plan to the south, you have those 5 parking spaces where you have your dumpster. I noticed the property line is cutting right across 2 of those, or possibly 3. Are those reserved for the animal hospital, or what's your relationship with the property just to the south?
Yes, that property is owned by Dr. Kilgore and his daughter Megan. And as a part of, my understanding is as a part of when that building that was in front was redeveloped, those parking spaces go with the clinic.
Okay, yeah, just to the south.
Correct.
Yeah, you can't see it on that.
Yeah, there are the 4 or 5 spaces that are contiguous to the overall lot that's back behind that building that's in front. But they do go to this piece of property, which is why we're not having to ask for a variance on the number of parking spaces for the proposed square footage
And-
after we add on to the
The
building.
dumpster's staying in that location right now? Is that
Yes.
where it is right now?
Yes.
Will they be continue to operate out of the existing building while the construction's going on?
Yes.
My wife wanted to know.
Yeah, we think that we'll be able to get 90% of the addition done before we have to disrupt the existing facility. And during COVID, they were able to operate successfully, basically having patients come and be serviced out in their vehicles. So the short duration of when we're buttoning everything together will be handled in that fashion. But yeah, the intent's to stay open.
I will entertain a motion.
I'll give you a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by whom, I'm sorry?
Mr. Harwell.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Harwell?
Yes.
Mr. Respenta?
Yes.
Mr. Armstead?
Yes.
Mr. Henniger?
Yes.
Ms. Andrus?
Yes.
Mr. Poulos?
Yes.
Mr. Broadhead?
Yes.
And Mr. Roberts?
Yes, so your case is supported by a 9-0 vote by the commission.
Great, thank you.
All right, so next item on our agenda is the request for us to consider proposed revisions to the city's zoning ordinance. Mr. Smith, did you want to present on that?
We discussed this at length about 2 hours ago, so I can go through as much or as little as you guys want me to. I'm here to answer questions, and if anybody from the public has questions, we can do that also.
Does anyone from the public want to ask any questions on the rezoning?
No, you, Brian.
Brian, in the back, do you want to ask any questions?
I'm good.
And thank you, Mr. Smith. We did have a good opportunity to review not only the new ordinance, but also the executive summary and the changes, and it was the consensus of the commission that we would recommend that it be approved by city council. So that's our recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, communications from the staff. Do we have any? The answer being no, we will move along to adjournment. So I will adjourn.
Adjourn.
Okay, it's thirded and approved.